Welcome back, everyone. For decades, tanks were the ultimate symbol of military power. They crushed borders, shattered defenses, and decided wars before diplomacy even began. Nations feared the thunder of armored columns more than speeches or sanctions. Russia, more than any other power, built its identity around this belief. Steel, firepower, mass, and momentum were supposed to guarantee dominance, but history has turned its back on that idea. This war did something no analyst truly expected. It exposed a brutal truth. The war tanks lost is the war Russia is now fighting. Russia entered this conflict believing armored superiority would break resistance quickly. The doctrine was familiar, tested, and trusted. Rapid advances, overwhelming force, psychological shock. Tanks leading the charge, infantry following, artillery flattening the path ahead. It had worked before, or at least that was the memory Russia clung to. But memory is not reality, and nostalgia is not strategy. The battlefield that awaited Russian armor was nothing like the battlefields of the past. From the very first weeks, something went wrong. Armored columns stalled. Convoys stretched endlessly along exposed roads. Vehicles broke down, fuel ran out, communication failed. And above all of it, something unseen watched every move. Drones, satellites. Sensors, the modern battlefield did not roar. It whispered, observed, calculated, and then struck with precision. The tank, once the predator, had become the prey. This war revealed a transformation that had been quietly happening for years. Tanks did not suddenly become useless because they were poorly designed. They became vulnerable because the environment changed. Modern warfare no longer rewards concentration of force. It punishes it. Every tank is now a signature. Heat, movement, metal, noise. Every armored unit is visible from above, trackable in real time, and targetable within minutes. Armor thickness no longer matters when the strike comes from the sky. Russia's tanks faced a nightmare they were never built for. Top attack missiles pierced their weakest points. Loitering munitions hovered patiently before diving down. Cheap FPV drones, guided by operators miles away, destroyed vehicles worth millions. The economics of war flipped overnight. A battlefield where a few $1,000s could erase decades of industrial investment is a battlefield where old powers bleed uncontrollably. Maneuver warfare depends on speed and surprise. Russia lost both. Movement invited destruction. Columns that tried to advance were detected instantly. Roads became kill zones. Fields were mined, watched, and registered for artillery. Every attempt at momentum triggered counter-fire. Tanks that stopped became stationary targets. Tanks that moved became visible targets. There was no safe option anymore. As armor failed, Russia leaned harder on artillery. Massive barrages replaced movement. Entire areas were reduced to rubble. But destruction is not victory. Artillery can suppress, but it cannot advance without protection. It consumes ammunition at a staggering rate. It demands logistics that must move constantly, and logistics in this war are hunted relentlessly. Fuel trucks, ammo depots, bridges, rail hubs, nothing is safe from constant surveillance. Logistics is the silent killer of armies. Russia's doctrine assumed secure rear areas and uncontested supply lines. Instead, the rear became another front. Precision strikes reached deep. Partisan activity disrupted transport. Drones hunted supply vehicles as aggressively as tanks. Without fuel, tanks are dead weight. Without maintenance, they rot. Without spare parts, they become scrap. The collapse was not dramatic. It was slow, grinding, and irreversible. This war also exposed a deeper problem: command and culture. Modern warfare demands decentralized decision-making. Small units must adapt instantly. Junior officers must act independently. Information must flow freely and quickly. Russia's military culture is built on hierarchy, obedience, and centralized control. Initiative is often punished. Failure is hidden. Bad news moves slowly upward. On a battlefield that changes by the minute, this rigidity is fatal. While opponents adapted tactics weekly, sometimes daily, Russia struggled to evolve. Drones were added, but not integrated. Electronic warfare was deployed, but inconsistently. Countermeasures lagged behind threats. Innovation existed, but it was uneven and slow. A system designed for set-piece battles could not keep pace with a war driven by improvisation and technology. The myth of Russian military invincibility began to collapse under the weight of visible failure. Burned tanks littered fields and roadsides. Captured vehicles were paraded for the world to see. Videos spread globally within hours. The psychological impact was devastating. Deterrence depends on perception. Fear depends on belief. When belief fades, power erodes. Morale suffered accordingly. Soldiers fight hardest when they trust leadership and understand the mission. Prolonged fighting, unclear objectives, high casualties, and poor equipment corrode that trust. Modern soldiers are not isolated from information. They see social media, they hear families. They sense reality beyond official statements. This creates a silent crisis that no amount of propaganda can fully suppress. Economically, the war became a slow hemorrhage. Tanks lost are not easily replaced. Production is expensive, slow, and dependent on advanced components. Sanctions tightened access to electronics, optics, and precision manufacturing. Older tanks pulled from storage required extensive refurbishment. Many were outdated before they even reached the battlefield. The gap between losses and replacements widened month by month. Meanwhile, the nature of destruction became more efficient. Drones improved, coordination improved. Intelligence sharing accelerated. Every lesson learned by one unit spread quickly across the battlefield. This created an asymmetry of learning. Russia adapted, but slower. And in modern war, speed of learning is as important as firepower. Diplomatically, the consequences were equally severe. Allies hesitated, neutral states hedged, arms buyers questioned reliability. Influence weakened. A military's performance is its strongest advertisement. Failure is contagious. It spreads doubt far beyond the battlefield. Power projection suffers when power itself looks exhausted. The war tanks lost is not just about machines, it is about mindset. Russia fought this war believing the future would resemble the past. It assumed mass would overwhelm precision. It assumed fear would break resistance. It assumed endurance alone would win. But endurance without adaptation is just prolonged decline. Modern war is unforgiving. It rewards those who innovate cheaply, think flexibly, and integrate technology seamlessly. It punishes those who cling to legacy systems and rigid doctrine. Tanks are not obsolete everywhere, but they are no longer decisive alone. They require protection, integration, intelligence, and adaptability. Russia deployed them as symbols of power. The battlefield treated them as targets. The collapse of maneuver warfare transformed the conflict into a war of attrition. Attrition favors those with stronger economies, better logistics, and faster innovation cycles. It favors networks over platforms. It favors data over steel. Russia entered this phase at a disadvantage and remains trapped within it. Every destroyed tank is more than a battlefield loss. It is a blow to prestige, economy, morale, and narrative. It tells a story the world can see without translation. It says that the age of armored dominance has ended, and those who refuse to accept it will pay the highest price. History does not judge intentions, it judges outcomes, and the outcome of this war, regardless of its eventual conclusion, has already rewritten military reality. The tank is no longer king, maneuver warfare is no longer supreme. The battlefield belongs to those who see first, strike first, and adapt fastest. Russia's power did not collapse in one moment. It collapsed piece by piece, with every stalled column, every destroyed convoy, every drone strike, every logistical failure, every lost illusion. This is not the end of Russia as a nation, but it is the end of a way of war it can no longer afford to fight. The war tanks lost will be studied for generations, not as a story of machines failing, but as a warning about what happens when power refuses to evolve. The future does not wait. It arrives quietly, observes patiently, and destroys mercilessly those who are unprepared. And that is how Russia's power collapsed, not with a final charge of tanks, but with the slow realization that the battlefield had already moved on without it.